Welcome to our Schema interviews. My name is Martha Van Berkel, and I'm the co-founder of Hunch Manifest and Schema Apps. We've launched this series to put faces, names, and experiences to the world of doing semantic search markup. As Google and search engines accelerate their features that leverage Schema.org, the community of people doing it is growing. And in this series, we're going to bring you their faces, their stories, their headaches, and their tips and tricks. To kick off the series, I'm joined today by Scott Allen from the Kansas City SEO Group. Scott, thanks for joining us today and being our first interview.
Glad to be a part of it.
So let's start by having you tell us a bit about yourself and your company.
I've been a graphic designer for probably over 20 years now. I'm currently one of the co-owners of the Kansas City SEO Group. We're a search engine optimization marketing company. We're based out of Kansas City, Missouri. The majority of our work that we're doing right now is SEO and online marketing for mid to large size companies.
Excellent. And tell me a bit about sort of how semantic search optimization fits in sort of the range of your services. Because I know you say you focus on SEO, but how does that fit into what you offer your clients?
We do it as an add-on service because we see, particularly in, I would say, the last 6 to 8 months, we see real value in it as far as search results and just, playing along with what Google's expecting. It's just more in line, kind of a cleaner approach to things. And we've actually done some testing where running essentially the same site, same template, and the only variable being the semantic markup, and we've seen that there's definitely a difference with the semantic stuff in there.
Excellent. And in your words, how do you describe sort of what semantic search is to your clients? Do you have sort of a tagline that you throw out to them?
We try. It's a little difficult because it can get very techy in a hurry, and we like to describe it as it's machine readable data that Google likes. So keep it a machine answer.
Excellent. I often say sort of we help websites speak to search engines. That seems to be one of the ones that most people understand. Excellent. Tell me a bit about the journey. So I feel like it's a journey even for myself, being sort of the co-founder of the Schema Apps, where I'm not the expert, but my co-founder is, but I've been sort of schooled on semantic markup over the last 4 years. Tell me a bit about your journey and sort of how you've gone about learning it, tools you've used, where you've gone to sort of stay on top of what's going on and how to apply it.
Well, we were aware of it about 2 years ago, and we kind of played with it in an experimental sense. And I would say in the last, early 2015, we got really serious about it because we started to, with all the social buzz and all the energy around it, there was something there. And the way that we run most of our stuff is we will test it on our own stuff before we implement it with our clients. And we started just kind of messing around with it to see what it can and what it can't do, and figured out that we were on the shallow end of a fairly deep pool.
Excellent. And what were some of the headaches or challenges when you first started doing it?
For us, and this is how we ended up getting connected and working with you guys, is when you get into it, we use WordPress predominantly as our development platform. And like most WordPress developers, your first inclination is to go try and find a plugin. And some of the headaches were, Google does have its tag manager markup system, and you can either do it completely, just what I would call an old school approach, and do it totally by hand, or the other end of that pendulum is the use of a plugin. And a lot of our struggles with the plugins is they just, frankly, were not good, and it was either a blanket approach where it was putting all kinds of schema that wasn't necessary or relevant on a page, or it was a really cumbersome, clunky way to work where you're flipping around through 4 or 5 different things and Notepad and Dreamweaver and whatever to try and get it to work. And then I think you guys were actually the third one that I one of those third time's a charm type deals. You guys were the third plugin that I installed, and it took me a minute to get up to speed with it. But once it clicked, I was like, this is super slick. And the way you guys have your system set up with the round tripping and the being able to log into a centralized portal system, that way you're not chasing code all over the place. It's easily organized. And I just, I was really impressed with what you guys had going on. So I was all in with your plugin.
Excellent. We believe in the concept of managing your structured data instead of coding it. I don't know if that's something that through your experiences is important or not. I don't know. Do you manage the structured data, or is it just like a one-time thing you do for your clients?
It depends on the client, but I would say we do manage it because we've had some clients where their business model has changed slightly, where we had one that had a brick and mortar store and they were selling physical products from the brick and mortar store, and they changed addresses and they changed a little bit of the focus of their product line. So we were able to log in and actually adjust some things there that were, the physical address part of it wasn't necessarily relevant anymore. So we were able to go in and take that out and keep it appropriate for the client. And, again, with the managing component too, it's being able to have a snapshot and a global view of what you're doing keeps you from implementing things that aren't relevant and aren't going to help the website. They're just, schema for the sake of schema is not our approach. I'd rather have 2 or 3 schema items that are relevant and effective instead of just that blanket approach that I referred to earlier.
So one of the things we often get asked is, how do you figure out sort of what the most appropriate schema markup is? Like sort of not doing too much, but doing exactly the right amount. Do you have some thoughts or comments on that?
I think that the schema.org website is actually one of the best resources out there because I've always thought that, they wrote the rules, and if you can adhere to what they're writing, that's the best spot to be in. I think it's again, going back to a judgment call on some of it, the classic phrase of if in doubt, leave it out, where I'd rather have something that we can add in later instead of, overpopulating it out of the chute. Because I think a lot of, particularly in the SEO world, if something comes out and it has buzz around it, if 2 works, a lot of the SEO community will do 10. So we've always tried to err on the side of caution.
Excellent. Tell me about sort of one of your schema success stories. So where you've seen it just sort of blow out of the water with results. Can you share any key success stories that you have with us?
Yeah, actually, I referred to it earlier, but the experimenting on our own stuff, our company website was actually hovering around the bottom of page 1, and occasionally it would flip back to page 2. And we let it sit for about a month, and then we implemented the schema and didn't do anything else to it out of the ordinary. We were still doing all of our standard stuff, and the only variable that we implemented was the schema markup, and we jumped pretty significantly.
Awesome.
I think it was a 2 or 3 week period after they crawled us twice. Google crawled us twice, and on that second crawl, it's something I don't want to call it a magic bullet, but we noticed a significant improvement after implementation there.
Awesome. High five. Way to go, schema. Tell me, someone's just starting to do this, and we actually have quite a lot of probably viewers who are business owners where we're doing SEO is not their day-to-day thing. Can you give them advice on sort of like where to start, or any sort of tricks or tips that you'd recommend?
I would start, and I know I hate to sound like a broken record, but I would start with the minimum effective dose. And a lot of times with small business owners, particularly in the local space, that's going to be just your name, address, phone number, and just start with that. Put it in on your website, make sure that it validates with Google, and then let it sit for a little bit, monitor your results, see what happens. And then as you get comfortable in that space and knowing what it can and can't do, start to explore and, look at what other business owners are doing. And if they've got it on their website, see what they are using and if it's appropriate for your business. And then, test and keep testing, because you invariably will break something. And I think that's the challenge with this sometimes, is when something's broken, it can be something really minor, but you can spend several hours chasing it down trying to get it fixed.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. I know your background's creative work. How does your creative work help you do structured data? How's that background lend to doing this work?
I think it's again the approach of looking and seeing if you can find something that's maybe not necessarily on the surface looks like it would belong to your company, but there are, sometimes with product reviews, you can come up with a creative way to implement it and make it appropriate without, just throwing it on there.
Awesome. So 2 last questions. One is, where do you go to sort of, or who are you following to kind of see the latest that's coming up around structured data?
I'm in a couple groups, some closed groups in Facebook that are pretty involved in it. And I a lot of times just Google alerts and schema.org to see, I tend to get information from a couple different spots and then check and see if it's a consistent response, because there's always somebody that's going to say, oh, Google said this, and you go and try and find proof that, are they really saying this, or is this your theory? And it's an ever-changing beast. And I think I think at least once a week I do a couple hours worth of research just to make sure that things are still as they were.
Got it. Excellent. Yeah, we try to publish our news of what's going on in the semantic markup world and changes and announcements that we see, and we publish that every other week to just help stay informed, because there's just a ton going on. I have Warble alerts, Google alerts that I read daily, and just see what's happening, because what's exciting is it's changing fast, and so that's where we're trying to stay on top of it to help keep you being successful. So my last question for you, Scott, is on your journey, what was your biggest headache that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome it?
Well, when we first got into it, we were using a combination of some handwritten schema where we were actually hand coding the HTML and that approach. And then I had the problem of using too many tools that were doing the same thing, where I was using a combination of the Google Tag Manager, doing some on-page markup myself manually, and then using a plugin. And this is what led me to you guys' plugin, is it got really confusing you would have things that would end up fighting or conflicting, and you couldn't figure out where the conflict was coming from. So the headache of trying to chase all of that stuff around was, when I found you guys' plugin, that solved it, because there was a consolidation to it where it's one-stop shop. And it's again, very impressed with your plugin, and I'm consider me a big fan.
Oh, thank you. We're happy that we're solving problems for people. That's what we love to do.
Well, and I try to evangelize your plugin whenever it comes up on Facebook group or things like that. I always point them your direction and say, it takes a little bit to get into it, but this plugin is totally worth your time.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share with our audience about your journey, or your views on semantic markup, or where it's going?
I think there will be a tipping point where it will. I think it's been around for a long time, and I think it's still uptrending, to use a Twitter term. I think it's going to level out at some point, and I think Google in particular will probably, I think right now it's the Wild West in some capacity, because there are sites and there are plugins out there where it will put every schema possible on every single page. And my thought is, and this is why we try and err on the conservative side, is my belief is that Google will start to rein that in and start to really put a relevancy layer on top of it. So if you've got all your ducks in a row right out of the chute, then you're going to be better off and not playing catch up 6 months, a year from now, whenever I feel like they're going to tighten it down.
All right. Well, we'll have to check back in a couple of months and see if your hypothesis happens.
It's a deal.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thank
Thank
you
you
for sharing your story. And if you want to find Scott Allen, you can find him Kansas City SEO Group out of Kansas City, Missouri. And the transcript, it will also be below with more details on how to get hold of Scott. Thanks.
Thanks, Martha.